I've been working on VDI since the big days of RDS, and I've been helping people with FSLogix for over 10 years. I was just awarded my second Microsoft MVP for Windows Cloud, so I've just about seen it all, and I'm sharing it all with you in this FSLogix Masterclass. Now, the thing I get asked most about lately are Entra joined cloud shares. So let's dive right in. When we go into Nerdio, you want to scroll down and go to the settings and then profile management. And we're going to create a new profile here for a directory. Give that a name and then change it to Entra ID. Then you can check this box and enroll your host with Intune, which is going to be very helpful since there's no group policies to manage anything in Entra ID. And then click OK. Now, of course, we're going to need some storage and then Azure files. Create a new one here. Give it a name and a description, and then pick your resource group, location, and performance tier. And your replication type should be ZRS. That way you can take advantage of Azure's storage replication between the availability zones for a little added protection. Your share level for the permission should be SMB contributor, and then click next. For the join option here, you're going to want Entra, and that's what's going to enable us to use Entra ID Kerberos, which will work all the authentication magic we talked about a minute ago. Then click next. With the storage account complete, give the file share a name and a description. And then for your capacity, you should use your average profile size that you're expecting multiplied by the number of users who will use this file share. And if you have no idea how large that should actually be, 30 gigs is the default profile size. And I'll show you how to change that and a whole bunch of other things in just a second. Now here's where you add the user's permissions, and the NTFS here should be set for FSLogix. Then click next. Here a new VM will be deployed to set up everything for Kerberos and all the permissions. And on the last screen here, you just want to add your tags and then submit. With that done, go back to settings at the bottom and profile management, and then FSLogix. Give that one a name and then check this box for cloud joined host to work. And then it's a good idea to exclude your admins. They don't need FSLogix profiles. As for the profile path, select the one that we just created and then scroll down. And here's where we can configure all the FSLogix settings. Now switch over here to advanced, and this is where you can just type in the particular features and then the value that you want them to have. And I've got all this up on my GitHub so that you can just see what the best practices are and apply them quickly, like this. And with all of that done, we can go back to our host pools, and then you can build a new one of those. Of course, you already know how to do all this, but the two things that you need to do here are set the directory for Entra ID, and then FSLogix to the new profile that we just created. Then just finish the build like you always would. Now for existing pools, you want to click the three dots and go to the settings, and then FSLogix on the left, and then change the drop down here for the new profile. And just be aware that this isn't going to migrate your profiles from one share to the other. It will set up a new profile in those shares. And with all that, you're ready to go. So open the Windows app and launch your new desktops. And you can see your FSLogix profile is starting up. And after you sign in for the first time, if you allow your folks to do this, they can set up their desktop wallpaper and configure a few other things, which will all be stored in their profile. So then the next time they log in, you'll get this kind of nicer experience. Then you can pop open the terminal window and type your dsregcmd /status. And you see that we are cloud joined only. And then type the command klist, and there are all of the file shares. And right there's the one that we just created. And it's authenticating through Entra ID, which you can see if you go back to the portal, take a look at your storage account, and then go to the file shares and click up here where it's configured at the top, and we are set for Entra ID Kerberos. And if you jump back into the file share itself and go to browse, there is our profile folder, and you've got your new profile disks. Now I know some of you aren't quite ready for that 100% cloud experience, so let's start again and talk about AD joined shares. So back in profile management, create a new directory profile, give it a name, leave it on Active Directory, and then type in your FQDN. Now the service account here needs to have permissions to join your new host VMs to Active Directory, and then put in the password and repeat. And optionally, you can set the OU where you want these VMs to land. Then click OK. Now, let's go to Storage, then Azure Files. Create a new one. Now you can pick from an existing storage account or just type in a name to create a new one, then give it a description and pick your resource group, location, performance tier, and replication. Then you should enable the share level permissions, which controls the Azure Files side of things. And users will need SMB Share Contributor. Then just click Next. Now up here on the Join type, you can select the AD profile that we made earlier and click Next. Now all that was for the storage account. This part sets up the Azure Files share, which gets a name and a description, and the capacity needs to be between 100 gigabytes and 100 terabytes. So pick whatever you need for your environment. Next are the users who will put their profiles here, and another Nerdio secret is to limit access to specific host pools, and the NTFS permission should always be FSLogix, which saves you from the single largest support ticket generator in all of AVD, having wrong FSLogix permissions. Nice, huh? On the next screen, all of this stuff will be used to create a VM, which is going to take care of joining the share to Active Directory, as well as all of those permissions that you need. Just click Next, and then add your tags and submit. Up until now, we've only talked about Azure Files, but there's actually 3 supported file share types: Scale-out file servers, Azure NetApp Files, and Azure Files. Now, this one is used usually in Azure Local and upcoming AVD hybrid solutions. In the cloud, NetApp is the mega enterprise class offering with performance up to 400,000 IOPS. And you can just change the size of your volumes on demand, which really means you have to consistently manage it to control your costs. Then there's Azure Files, which comes in 2 flavors, Standard and Premium. Standard are built on top of hard disk drives and gives you up to a certain number of performance, which means it's a lower cost solution and you're billed based on how much data you put into that share. So you can build a 100 terabyte share, fill it with 10 gigs, and you're only charged for 10 gigs. Premium, however, is built on much faster SSDs and gives you guaranteed performance. And your billing and your performance are based on the size of the share, no matter how much data you have. So a 100 terabyte share costs the same if you have 10 gigs in there or 100 terabytes. So the trick is to size it based on how much storage you need, like 30 gigabyte profile size times 300 users is 9 terabytes of storage. But that's only half the story. In Azure, if you go to your file storage and create a new share, just scroll down a little bit, and you see here the max and burst I/O rates. Now, on average, a user signing into FSLogix will use about 50 IOPS of storage performance, and then after their login is complete, they use roughly 10 IOPS. So if we calculate those 300 users at 50 IOPS apiece, that's 15,000 total IOPS if they all logged in at the same time. So set your storage to 9 terabytes, and see that only gives you 12,000 IOPS, but you would get 27,000 burst. However, burst doesn't mean extra performance whenever you want. Burst is more like a credit card, and baseline is your paycheck. So if you use less than your baseline, you build up credits, and you spend them during those logon storms. So burst won't help in this scenario. But if you increase the share to 12 terabytes, then you get the 15,000 IOPS that you actually need. Now, another pro tip that you need to know is that you can grow the share at any time and instantly get more performance. But you can only shrink to save cost once every 24 hours. Now, to change your share size, you just scroll down on the left and open your storage, go to Azure Files, click the 3 dots on your share, then go to Auto Scale and Configure. And we've got here 3 sections: Quota, Scheduled Quota Increase, and Scaling Logic. The quota unit can be relative, which is just a percentage of used capacity, and that will grow or shrink along with you, or an absolute size. Now, the minimum for premium is 100 gigs, and just keep in mind that your size can't be actually smaller than your used capacity. Then we've got the min and the max. So auto scale doesn't just grow forever. Now, if your environment has predictable spikes like the end of month operations or your daily logon storm, you should enable your scheduled quota. Select your days, hours, and then a time zone. and then you just select the quota that you need. That way, your users aren't waiting for performance when they actually need it. Finally, we have the scaling logic, starting with the trigger, and that sets your latency for max or average, then how much to increase the quota for scale out and scale in once your threshold is reached. Then just enable it and click Save. All right, so things are looking good. I think it's time for a deep dive on all the settings for FSLogix. And there is a whack ton of stuff here. And to help you, Nerdio reveals another secret. You can mouse over the eyes here and see what the feature does. Then if you want to change something from the defaults, just click on the Not Configured and set it how you like. Now, some of the best practices here are to delete local profiles, which, to be clear, I would only do in a brand new environment. And that way you avoid local profiles from the beginning, because troubleshooting that can really be a pain. Then flipping the directory name puts the user name first, which makes them all easier to find. Dynamic means that a profile will only take up a couple megs in the beginning and then grow over time. The locked retry count and interval makes things connect a lot smoother. And then we have prevent login with failure and the temp profiles. And while these aren't exactly official best practices, I'd rather see users not be able to get in and have to call for help rather than get stuck with a local profile, do a whole bunch of work, and then when they sign into the next machine, all of it's gone. But hey, that's just me. Profile type should always be 0 unless you need a profile to be mounted on multiple hosts at once, which can get very complex very fast, so I'd almost never recommend doing that. The reattach here works similar to the retry intervals, and then you have your max profile size. Then the volume type should be VHDX, which lets you use dynamic disk to save on a bunch of space. And you can also DIY it here in the advanced mode, but you'll need to know the names of all of the features and their values, like this. And this one will compress the disks when the users log off, which saves you even more space. Now there's many more settings, but for that to make sense, we need to first talk about Cloud Cache. Now by default, FSLogix will give you one SMB file share. One. And that means it's a single point of failure. FSLogix has two profile types. Office profiles are just an M365 cache. They're already protected by Microsoft, so you don't need to protect them again with something like a backup. But your user profiles contain real data. You do need to back those up. So how many shares do you really need? And where should they go? Well, that'll depend on your requirements and your risk. So if you have questions, drop them in the comments and let's talk about it. Now, if you're building a pool in East US, for example, we should have HA storage, which should mean 2 separate storage accounts and 2 separate file shares in the same region. And if you need DR, then we need to think cross regions. And you should also probably consider a mix of storage platforms like Azure Files paired with Azure NetApp Files. So that way you're protected in case the storage technology is having an issue. And FSLogix allows you to have up to 4 file shares for a single deployment, like 2 in East US and 2 in West US. So feel free to drop your questions here and we'll discuss it and help you out. Now, creating storage in Nerdio is real easy, so we're gonna speed through this. You give your storage account a name and a description, pick your resource group and location, and that should always be as close to the session host as possible for the lowest latency and the best performance. Speaking of performance, select your performance tier. Your replication should be ZRS, which is Zone Redundant Storage. Azure will replicate the shares across the availability zones, which is your first layer of protection. Next, you want to enable the file share permissions to SMB contributor. Click Next. For your join type, you can go either way, whatever works in your environment. And to stay on top of everything in AVD, Win365, Intune, and Nerdio, you'll want to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Then just click Next. For the file share, remember each share should be in a different storage account, so you'll have to go and create those. But each share should get its own name and description, and then you set the size, which should be the number of users multiplied by your average profile size, and then plus 15 to 20% for growth. And here's where you grant permission for the users to access the share, and the NTFS permissions should be for FSLogix. On the next screen, this is the VM that'll be deployed to set everything up for you. So you can click next here, add your tags, and submit, and then repeat for all your other storage accounts and all your other file shares. Now, once all that's done, you want to go down to the settings and profile management, create a new FSLogix profile, give that a name like Cloud Cache, exclude the admins here, and if you went with Entra, check this box, and if not, then leave it alone. Now, down here, you want to enable Cloud Cache first, and then for the profile paths, you need to add all of the shares that you just set up, and you have up to 4. Now, the FSLogix settings, we want to click here and set it to advanced. Then in the description, you'll find a link here to my GitHub, where I've got this file, where you can just copy and paste each section, and then I'll explain what everything is going to do. Now, Cloud Cache works differently, so let me explain. When you sign in, FSLogix will make sure that you can write out to the file shares. Then a cache disk is created on the local session host, and the profile is going to get locked, so that way they can all get to work. Now, as they write data in their profiles, it will get stored in the local cache disk, and then once it's all done, it will replicate out to the file share. And that's going to be done in the order that they are listed. And this really helps because if you ever have some kind of outage or hiccup in the network or storage, the profile will just keep on writing because it's local on the VM, and the users won't even know what happened. Now, when they sign off, all of the final replications have to be completed before the lock will get released, and then they can sign in again. So all of the best practice settings here that I've got listed for you will not only help performance, but protection for all of this. And we do have the settings that you're probably used to, like deleting local profiles, flip-flopping the directory name, and the size here, which could be set for anything that you like, but 30 gig is the default. On the Cloud Cache tab, we've enabled healthy providers required for register and unregister. So the way that this works, as long as there is one healthy storage provider, which means a file share, as long as there's one that's healthy, the user can get signed in quickly rather than waiting for all of them to check in, which helps if you're also adding DR regions. And the unregister requires only one storage provider, again, one file share to be functioning so you can finish what you're writing and get signed out, and then all the rest will get replicated. So that way you can sign out faster. Now, we also have here clear cache on logoff, which is going to save space on the local disk, basically wipe out the cache disk so that we don't leave anything behind. Now, most AVD session hosts just have a C drive, but in Cloud Cache, we're writing a lot of data on the C drive, and the more users you have signing in at once, the more writes you're doing, which is going to slow the whole C drive down. So it is usually recommended to have a larger disk for your C drive, so that way you get more performance. However, if we switch back to the all settings here, you can use the cache directory setting to move the cache disk off the C drive. You could put it on, for example, the VM temp disk, which has a lot more performance than the C drive. Or even better, for more performance, you might consider using VMs with ephemeral disk, which uses the physical storage on the Azure servers in the data center directly. And that's going to be way faster than any VM disk could ever be. Now, one more optional thing are profile exclusions. You see, Cloud Cache replicates everything in the profile, even the temp disk and the recycle bin and all the other caches from all the other programs you use. But we don't really need any of that. So the way to reduce the data in your profile and save space, which saves time and saves money, is to use this guy, the Redirections XML file. And this doc is linked in the description. And that tells you how to write the whole file, which is basically this framework. Now, first we have to exclude any common folders. So back in the doc, you see all of these different numbers here. Well, you just add up the value of the folders you want to exclude. For example, contacts, links, and music is going to equal 49. And that goes right up here. Then we have this middle section to exclude any directories that we don't want in the profile. So your biggest gains to exclude are going to be Teams, Edge, Chrome, Outlook, OneDrive, and your temp and crash dump folders, which looks like this. But when you exclude a folder, you can also add back some of the subfolders. just like this, which is good so that you copy all of your Edge passwords into your profile and you leave out all the rest of it. And this file is also out on my GitHub, so you can download it if you want to. And then paste it right in here and click OK. Now, Cloud Cache does a great job as a DR-like solution, but there is no way to actually configure the RTO or RPO, and that is the point and time that you want to recover to. So it's not officially a full DR solution, but we are mostly there already. So just click the three dots here and select Clone. Give it a name like Cloud Cache DR, and for the CCD location, I already have 4 paths, 2 in the primary region and 2 in the DR region. So just flip the order, and that way you'll be writing first to the DR region and then replicating back to the primary. So when users don't see the performance drop, and when the DR is over, all the data will already be back in the primary region, so you can get back to business as usual. Then you can go to your workspace and to your host pool, click the 3 dots, go to Settings, and then go to FSLogix. Here, all you would need to do is just change the FSLogix profile to the Cloud Cache DR profile. But there's another way entirely, which is even simpler. Now we just need a plan for those DR hosts. And since this is an active scenario, just go down to the Backup and Recovery, and then go to the Recovery tab, and Enable. Set the prefix for the DR VMs, and then pick the DR network, resource group, and the OS image. And then down here, you want to enable the secondary FSLogix storage. Pick your share in the DR region, and then you can click Save and Close. Now this is going to set up half of your hosts in the primary region and the other half in the DR region. And of course, you can tweak this approach a little more to be active-passive. You'll just set all of the DR region hosts to drain mode, and then you need to reconfigure autoscale for the actual number of hosts you need on a regular basis. Which just leaves us with one more thing. So let's just think about app management for a second. How do you make sure that only the right people use those apps? Well, the secret is back in the host pool. 3 dots, Applications, then Installed Apps. Click here to discover and run now. FSLogix App Masking lets you take any of the apps on the host and mask it out, which goes way beyond just hiding the shortcuts or the start menu icons. It completely hides the app from the users who aren't cleared to use them. And right now, Nerdio is hard at work writing all of the app masking rules to make it super easy. Now, once discovery is complete, we see we've got a whole bunch of apps here and over 600 app rules. Now, to do something with all of that, we need a rule set, and that's going to need a name. And then you can select the apps that you want to mask from the drop-down list. And once you're done picking those out, scroll down, and we need to assign the mask. And that'll be for all users by default. And you can exclude the local admin so they can see everything. And if you need any other group excluded, you can add it here. Then just click Save and Apply. And another Nerdio secret to make FSLogix better, Nerdio will wake up all of the hosts in the pool and apply the app masking rules automatically. And it will also take care of deploying those rules out to future hosts as well. Now, when the user signs into the pool, the apps that they aren't allowed to see are masked completely. You remember we masked out Chrome, for example. That's not here at all. Neither are any of the Office apps. But we did allow Putty and Audacity. So drop your comments, questions, and requests for new video topics, and we'll see what we can do. The next thing, now that you're an expert in FSLogix, are all of the other profile types that Nerdio offers, which you can see right here.